and welcome to another episode of the Beyond the Device podcast, where we explore the life-defining moments that shape careers within the medical device industry. We are particularly interested in understanding how people's personal experiences... Let me start that again. Sorry, guys. All right.
You've had a week off.
I haven't thought about it for a week, yeah. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Beyond the Device podcast, where we explore the life-defining moments that shape careers within the medical device industry. We are particularly interested in understanding how people's personal experiences go on to influence their professional journeys. And as we progress through the conversation, we will eventually land on the question, what is the one defining moment or experience that changed everything for you and set you on the path that you're onto today? Today's guest is someone that I've known for almost my entire career. I placed him in one of his earlier contracts when I was rocking a questionable haircut. Some people said I looked like an ice gem, and he was carving out his career, sort of early career pathway at that point. And our careers have kind of run in parallel ever since, and it's genuinely great to see that we're still working together on certain projects. So he's a quality and regulatory consultant and has worked across a wide range of devices. So this includes sterile, aseptic, diagnostic software, and more recently, a lot more involved in AI. He's currently involved in some genuinely forward-thinking projects with Certi AI on regulating AI as a medical device in the UK, as well as leading projects with the University of Glasgow. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Adam Rae. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having us, guys. It's nice. It's strange reflecting on how long we've known
Welcome.
each other, Nathan. It's been a while.
Yes. Yeah.
Have we known each other longer than you and Duncan have known each other? Do I win this?
Not quite.
No. No. Yeah.
Duncan's in the middle like, what's going on here?
No,
Shall I
so
just
Duncan,
leave?
Yeah. No, yeah. Duncan and I met probably 2 or 3 years before recruitment.
Okay.
Kind of
And
uni
that's
days, wasn't it? Yeah, just through mutual friends at uni.
Okay.
And then Nathan got me the job in recruitment and never looked back, really.
Yeah. Sorry,
So we're approaching 25th of November. I started in recruitment in 2013. So yeah, going into our what's that? Our 13th year.
Yeah, anniversary. Yeah, anniversary's coming up then.
Don't forget it. But this isn't about me. This is about you. So
No, it's nice to be here. Thanks for having us. It's genuinely, Nathan, as you said, it's a pleasure to still be in touch with ourselves. That was my first contract.
That was the first, yeah.
Contract, yeah. That was the first.
So before that then, because people get into contracting at a certain stage in their career after doing like however long in permanent roles, but if we take it all the way back, so take us back to childhood and where your story began.
So I was raised in Glasgow, very, very working class upbringing. Like most people in Glasgow, it's a very, very working class, very raw, very real place. Raised off the back of an immigrant family. So my mother, first generation immigrant from Malaysia, came over here. My dad's family were Irish immigrants. So I was in a very, very kind of raised in an area of Glasgow where, it's kind of all people that have kind of from a similar background. At school was like the kind of only, like one of the very few kind of dark-skinned kids in my school. So that was quite an interesting upbringing, knowing that I was different in a lot of ways, but not really perceived differently in some, but culturally very different. Like at lunchtime, my mum did not let me go to the chip shop for lunch. Like she was like, "You're coming home for lunch and you're having noodles for lunch in the house," But at the same time, she was like, I'm not going to teach you Cantonese because I want you to fit in, So yeah. I learned Malay, because that's in the Bahasa Malay, because that's the native language in Malaysia. But one of the other languages is Cantonese, and my mum was really she was so concerned with me not fitting in Glasgow, because in Glasgow in the 90s was a very different place to what it is now, So I was raised kind of not being able to get too in touch with that, and now I'm totally resentful of it, because I could speak Cantonese right now if she did teach me it. That would be absolutely amazing, like quadlingual. So I was raised very like that. my mum was a nurse. My dad actually never worked because he had really severe kind of mental health issues throughout my childhood. Very linked to alcohol. This is super raw. Like very linked to alcohol, which most things in Glasgow are. Like Glasgow has a really, really in the UK in general, I believe anyway, has a severe kind of really culturally endemic issue with alcohol, of which we normalise it so much. And so I was raised kind of very normally, rough bit of Glasgow. Mum was a Asian nurse, immigrant. Dad never worked, so I grew up kind of with not a lot of money in household. Not really a huge amount of direction apart from you will go to university was the only direction that I was given basically from my parents. Well, more my mum was basically saying if you're not going to university, you're not staying in this house.
Wow. So, and that was from an early age, so that pushed you academically. Was that some kind of spoken about pressure?
Yeah, it was widely acknowledged, and then when I was like 14, 15, you start making a lot of noise as a young man, and you say, I'm gonna start kind of, I want to work, and I'm getting fed up with school because I was a terrible student. I could not pay attention in school. I've got like really, really, like my attention span is quite bad. Like I need to use all these techniques to make myself focus, like just getting up super early and stuff. But yeah, I knew that was the route, and then when I was 14, 15, my mum started to relax that a little bit and said, as long as if you leave school and you work, then you can. And I was like, well, I'd rather just keep studying because that seems easier, So academia was always the way that I was going to end up going. At first, although I was not, I never will even now consider myself like an academic, because I'm an engineer at my core. And then got the kind of entrepreneurial side of things, which I've really allowed myself in the last few years. When I believe my entrepreneurial side of me was very active when I was young, and then between when I was like 15 and 24, I kind of shut it down because I was kind of focused on kind of cutting my teeth in the discipline that I'm in, so learning medical devices, learning industry, and I just really let the industry and my engineering degrees absorb me, as opposed to trying to kind of get too into it, But when I was like 10 years old, I opened like a shop in my mum's garage. They went, because it was when Costco first came to the UK, and my mum had a Costco card because she was a nurse, and they had all this stuff sitting around the house, and I was like, this is wicked. Like, we've got all these milkshakes and like Yazoo and like J2 and all that stuff. So I wrote a pricing sheet. I wrote this pricing sheet, and I actually had like a shop running out of my mum's garage with like staff and all that, totally undeclared, the lot of it. It was like 10 years old.
That's so good.
Yeah, so cool. And made a load of money from it, and it got to the point the local shopkeeper could not keep up with my pricing because I had no overheads. So he came to my house and said to my mum and dad, like, you need to sort this out. Like, he's like, I'm not getting any customers at lunchtime because they're all going to your house.
That's so good.
It was brilliant. So
I'm
that
sure
was like my first
Microsoft and Amazon were all started in garages as well, weren't they? So
yeah.
you had the potential there. You could be like a multi-billionaire tech
Could've
mogul by now if you'd have
got
stuck
shut
with
down.
it.
I could have just opened shops, just got open corner shops in Scotland, but I got shut down. You know what I mean? It's, shut down too early.
So this engineering interest and that's the direction that it took. Was that based on any sort of early exposure to anything or anything that led you down that engineering path?
Always like breaking things. I'm always very good at testing and breaking things. So from when I work now with devices and stuff, it's very easy for me to find problems and stuff because I know how to test things and break things. And from an early age, I was always into cars and aeroplanes. So I was just obsessed with cars, anything fast, and aeroplanes in general. Just the concept of flight was just wild to me, there's the idea that we can make something fly.
It still is, to be fair.
It's totally mad, It's one of those things you never normalise to. So that was the basis of what got me interested in kind of things. And engineering was always been into cars and aeroplanes, and then thinking, I'd really like to know how that works. I'd really like to understand exactly what makes that do that. And that's kind of, I spend my life wondering that about the world, about things.
Yeah. Just something that you mentioned earlier. So with your dad, and his mental health struggles, and also knowing that you were, I guess, slightly different in the school environment that you were in.
Yeah.
Those early years and how that has potentially shaped you growing up, is that at your core, like in terms of values, and how has that shaped you even now?
I don't know, to be honest. I think when I was younger, you know that when you were at school and people would always say, what does your dad do?
Mm,
You know, that question. So I think a lot of it was I had a lot of shame when I came to answer that question, because I couldn't say, oh, my dad's a doctor or an engineer or
yeah.
something like that. I never had anything like that to be able to say. So I always felt a lot of shame around that, um, which I don't regret, because I don't believe in regret. You know, I look at the information that I had at the time, and the feelings that I was feeling at the time, and I kind of say, yeah, I back myself regardless. But retrospectively looking at it, it makes me think now really about, you've not got a clue as to kind of what's going on, you know, like even at the time. I think shame is a really interesting emotion. It makes me think on the daily about the way I behave in terms of with my partner, or as a business person, or as, say, like a colleague or a peer or a friend, in terms of, you know, trying to show up as much as possible for other people, but also not neglecting myself. And I think the main thing it taught from me is that I need to put the mask on myself first, before I can do it for anyone else. And I think, you know, you guys run your own business, you know what it's like. I think we're all capable of just burning ourselves out to the point in which we become terrible friends, terrible partners, terrible business partners, you know. But I think that's one of my favourite phrases, you know, you need to put the mask on first and look after yourself before you can kind of help others.
Here's a
Yeah.
it is a question on that. So when you sort of said about, you know, people ask, what does your dad do? Did you ever find yourself saying, oh, he was this, or like in my own situation, it's like, yeah, my mum was a teacher,
Yeah.
or my dad was a carpenter, and it's just, yeah, you don't want to go there.
Yeah, I would always just say my dad was a musician, because he played guitar and he done some guitar teaching. And he actually taught me
Yeah.
to be a sick guitar player. You know, like I won like a jazz competition when I was like 17, like in Glasgow. Like, so my dad like had this side of things, of which I was raised so much thinking about like the work thing, that I never gave my dad credit for that side of him. You know, my dad was he was actually very entrepreneurial. Like I get all the entrepreneurial stuff from my dad, but he had ideas he could never deliver. You know, kind of thing. He had too much demons to be able to deliver, and I was so focused on the value in terms of, I was quantifying the value in terms of like it being a job, like a 9-to-5 job. Whereas my dad was there to pick me up every day from school. Every single day from school, he picked me up from school. Like when I split my head open, of which I've done about 8 times, like my head is like, it's got scars like just all over the place. He would come to school straight away. He would take me to hospital. You know, like as like a parent, he stood up and was there every single day. You know, but I feel that shame from that side of things, that I never appreciated that when I was younger. You know, like, and you can't, obviously you're just a young lad, like, but that makes me think of that now, that, you know, you can add value in lots of different ways, you know, whereas I think I really grew up with this thing of it being, you know, not having a lot of money, so I grew up with this thing of being money focused, really, really money focused, and if it's not adding to the bottom line, then it's not valuable, you know.
I think when you're grown up, and like you said, in the 90s, very different to how it is
Yeah,
now. Even when you think about things like paternity leave and how present fathers are now compared to maybe when they used to be,
totally.
it's actually what's your measure of success? Because I guess for a lot of people now, being able to go and pick your kid up from school every day is
It's
success
a goal.
to a lot of people.
Yeah, it's a goal nowadays.
If that's if Yeah, and if you're making that out of choice because you've earned it, it means you've done a lot in the right way. But what your child sees at that stage is just someone that's present and won't know until they're older that that's actually a really great value to have as a parent.
Yeah,
I find like when I reflect on my childhood and how it turned out with like parents splitting up and stuff like that, I almost, it was like anti-role models in certain ways. So much good stuff, but then there was also things where I grew up going, when I'm older, I'm never going to do that. I'm never going to have a family and kids and have a divorce and stuff like that. And it carries me to this day about,
yeah,
as you said, how you show up as a partner, the loyalty there, the trust, because I've experienced it the other way as a child. So you can have role models, good and bad, because all it does is shape who you want to be.
Totally. Spot on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've obviously spoken about influences from a kind of young age in terms of, well, just get to university. That's your goal. You like breaking things, you like putting things back together, trying to figure things out. But what we tend to find is there are certain moments, turning points, pivotal events in your life that have a much bigger impact than others. And perhaps you don't know at the time, but it's not until you look back and you're like, if that didn't happen, this wouldn't have happened, or I wouldn't have done X, Y, and Z. So do you have any defining moments, turning points that stand out for you?
One was when I was 21, 22, just finishing university. So I was finishing my master's degree in engineering, and that was kind of the moment where, Duncan, I was like yourself, my mum and dad began their divorce proceedings around that time when I was at 21, 22, which really makes you grow up in a lot of ways, that I think still at the end of university, you're still an absolute idiot, you're an absolute idiot. And when I was like 21, 22 is when I realised that, okay, I'm really going to need to step up here, and more than one way to support both parents going through this divorce. My mum was at an age where she could retire, and I wanted her to be able to do that, basically. So the moment for me was when my grandma and grandpa in Malaysia were becoming much older. My mum had an option to retire. She kind of hit that age where she could retire, get the lump sum before there was more tax coming on it, kind of thing. So we were looking at how much she would get if she retired, like say today versus in 6 months, and there was going to be like a 20% difference in a lump sum, and we were skint. So that was significant. So I just kind of said to my mum really flippantly, like, okay, you retire, and I'll sort us out. and I just kind of said it, and my mum was like, kind of really resistant at first, and then she kind of agreed eventually, and I got this job, my first graduate job, which moved me down to England. But that was probably the moment that I forced myself into adulthood, I'd say, from being that young man to just being an absolute idiot, like I said, to then being like, okay, I am now gonna make sure that my mum is cool and that she can go back to Malaysia for as long as she wants, and she doesn't need to worry about me, or if she needs about if she's having any financial difficulty, like I can try and cover it. Like I was still just earning like graduate job money, so I wasn't making like good money at all. But I'd say that was definitely. There's a few moments for me, Nathan, but that was the first.
Yeah.
The very first.
Okay. And how are you actually feeling at that point? It sounds like a lot of pressure.
Huge pressure, but I was all right. I was just getting on with it. I think I was like, we really didn't have a lot of money at all. I could not scrape like £1,000 together to get a deposit for a flat that I was sharing with like two other people, and me and my mum. I remember the day we had that conversation. This is super raw, so I don't know if this is too deep, but I remember on that day where we had that conversation, me and my mum were sitting on the couch. We couldn't scrape together £1,000 between us, and I had this job starting in England the week after. And I remember, and I was just like, what is this, man? Like, I need to break this cycle that I've been in for my whole life of a tyre goes in the car and that's the month done, or, one loss of some shifts that my mum would work was that was it, the mortgage is at risk, that for me, having that, sitting on the couch kind of bawling my eyes out with my mum was the moment I was like, I'm going to change this, so a lot of pressure, but a lot of reward at the end of it. Yeah. So I just the next 5 years were a blur, basically.
And like that point you just said, trying to get a deposit together, starting a new job. Like, what are the actual emotions? Can you name them? Can you?
Pressure, definitely the first. Overwhelmed. Was definitely one. But also excited, really excited about being able to do something about it, as opposed to being, when you're younger. And I think when you get to 17, 18 as a young man, I think it's a really interesting age, because there's a phrase we use in Glasgow where you say you think you're game, but we say game, you think you're game. like, but you're really not, you know, because like we said, you're just an idiot. But when I got that job, I was like, right, I can do something here. I can set my family differently. I can try and break this poverty cycle, whatever we're in, you know, kind of thing. I know it's in my control, and that's the way I like things to be. You know, I like them to be in my control. So I'd say definitely massively overwhelmed, but a lot of it was excitement and motivation. I was super motivated.
Yeah, I think you must have been the happiest first day of your that first day when you've got into your new company. Yeah, it must have been like a rocket. Like, who is this guy?
Yeah, I was like 3-piece suit as well. It was so embarrassing. It was so embarrassing. Engineering firm showed up in a 3-piece suit with a tie pin as well. It was really all the way, man. You know what I mean?
Get you on the apprentice.
Yeah. I was way more ready for the apprentice than anything else. Like, the engineering guys that I was sitting with were like, "What are you doing here?"
So that's an obvious turning point for you. Did you know at the time how important it was, or is it now you look back and think, if you sort of said like the next few years were a blur, did you realise like in the moment this was a big point for you?
Not really, no. I felt like it was the only thing I could do, and I think like that was very much for me, was the only motivation I needed, was I felt like I had no other choice. You know, so I was just like, there's nothing else that I can do. I want my mum to be able to, because my mum moved to Malaysia from Malaysia to Glasgow about 45 years ago, actually 50 years ago. So this was 40 years ago she moved, and she'd spent the majority of time away from her family. So I was just like, well, I want you to spend time with your mum and dad while they're still in relatively good health, you know. So I kind of just made the jump, and, you know, kind of maybe thought a bit before I spoke, and then was like, okay, I'm committed now, and then, you know, that was it.
And you alluded to there being more than one sort of key turning points in your life. What others would you share?
So one more after that was when it was at the end of that first graduate job, and I remember I'd done my 2.5 years at that graduate scheme, which was, I was on this leadership development program, which was great. The company were great. They put me through a master's degree in strategic quality management, put me through loads of training, and they'd kind of employed me, I think, on the basis that I will be their next like chief operations officer or like chief regulatory guy or something like that. And I just remember I always wanted a 5 Series BM and to be a director. That was it. And I remember it was like 2.5 years in, and I remember just a moment clicked where I became pally with these directors because I had like the lines to them and stuff like that quite easy through this graduate scheme. And I just remember I was thinking, not sure about that, you know. And I there was this one particular moment I was up in Glenrothes in Scotland doing some work, and a director left, and it was off the back of something very tense happening, I think. And I just remember kind of looking at it and saying, oh, that doesn't really... You kind of look at it with all the reward and none of the risk or the pressure. You kind of look at it and say, oh, the salary, the title, and the car, and, you know, and that's... And I remember that for me was the moment of saying, okay, I need to leave this business and I need to change. Because I was in aerospace at that time. That was actually aerospace that I was working in for like my first year or two of my career. And that after that, that's when I said, okay, I need to make a change here, because I think I don't want to be in this industry, first of all, anymore, because I was kind of like, just, it wasn't really what I thought it would be. My mum being in life sciences and healthcare made me want to focus on that space more, because I like contributing towards public health. I think it's really important. And yeah, that was when that was another major turning point, when I said, okay, I need more purpose than just being a director with a 5 Series, you know. I need to do more and feel like I'm in an industry that contributes more, and that I can see the way things are working and helping towards a common goal, which was healthcare. You know, that was a major shift for me, was like feeling more purpose.
And how were you feeling at that point? Because you've got this goal in your mind. You think you want to be the director, you want the 5 Series, and then it's not quite cracked up to be what you thought it was going to be or what you wanted. So Was that a positive feeling, a negative feeling? Did you feel deflated? What was going on there?
I don't know. I didn't really think anything when I realised that I wasn't interested in that. I kind of more felt relief of, oh, okay, that's like, I feel a bit more clarity now. You know, I felt clearer in what I wanted. Even though I didn't really know what I wanted, I felt clearer that I didn't want just that. You know, because it's kind of like I'd inadvertently put a ceiling on myself. That just says get to that director's job, get that 5 series in that shoe, and everything's fine. You know. So when I knew that that's what I wasn't really wanting, I felt more kind of a relief of, okay, that's good. Now, still don't know what I want. I had this mentor that kept speaking to me about 5-year plans, and he had not spent enough time with me to realise that I cannot think about 5 minutes. You know, like he really had not he had not spent enough time with me about that, and he kept speaking to me about 5-year plans, and so I was thinking about it a bit more than in that sense. You know, he made me think a bit more strategically about my career and my brand and what I want it to be like. So I just felt relief and excitement that I was taking a step into something that I felt was more in my right direction, even though I wasn't sure if it was.
Yeah, it feels like the positive words you use are linked to when you've got clarity and control, and that's so true for so many people. When you know where you're headed, or what your next step is, or that's the decision that you're making, you can own it and you feel excited about it. It's where maybe you're doubting what the next step is, or you're not necessarily enjoying exactly what you're doing. It's the uncertainty that then leads to the negative feelings.
Yeah,
and just when you were talking about the go on.
Oh, sorry. But that was also the next thing after that was also within that year of that the within that space. Duncan, was the next thing was, I remember on the Monday I was going into work and I had this commute to do, and I remember just having that thought of, oh, I can't wait for Friday, and I remember I was like, oh no. And I was like,
or the Sunday dread.
Yeah, and I was like, time to leave this job, and that was my thought. That was like my thought pattern was like, oh no, can't wait for the weekend. Right, I'm gonna leave this. I'm out of here. You know, and I was like, I need to make a change because I can't live my life like that. I always swore to myself I would never live my life like that. Wishing my weeks away.
I remember when I first moved to London, which was before you and Nathan knew each other.
But I'm glad.
So I actually had I don't know if you remember this, Nathan. When I stayed at yours for the first 6 weeks moving to London, I had that little fold-out single bed in the lounge.
Yeah.
Remember?
It wasn't a bed. That wasn't a bed.
It wasn't, was it?
It's basically a clothesline, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I had to wait for everyone else to go to bed and like make their lunch for the next day before I could actually just get the lounge and set my bed up. And then I moved into that flat with Tom, and we hadn't earned any commission at that point because we just started out. But for me, like, there was no plan B. I was getting Wonga loans each month to keep up with the rent, but then that every day going into work going, but I'm in control of this. I'm in a job where if I do this job well, I will earn commission, and that's what gets me out of this hole. So that is the focus. And I think a lot of people, unless they're having conversations like this, they forget to stop and reflect how far they've come. Because where I'm at now is exactly where I wanted to be 4 years ago, before we started Kapu. And in 5 years' time, where we are then is what we're probably aspiring to now. So I make a point, at least once a year, just when I'm out on my bike in London, I will cycle to West London and I will stop at that flat that I lived in because it was a shithole. It's a dump. And I'll just stop and look at it and go, yeah, fair. Like we've come out of that. But when you're in it, you've got all these different emotions going on. But there almost wasn't any time to think about how you were feeling. You're just like, right, I'm in control. Just do the thing and be good at it, and the rest will work itself out.
That's a sick story, by the way. That's a sick story.
Cheers.
Love it.
It was such a dump of a flat.
Yeah, I love hearing about these early stories though. These are the things that make you, you know, like, and I love reflecting on it. It's so cool to like look back and say, like, that I was sleeping on a couch for weeks with Nathan, and I'm like, I couldn't pull $1,000 together for a deposit for a flat. You know, it's like, it's kind of like you can totally change your life just with these things, and I love reflecting on it.
Yeah, and through all of this then, and I'm conscious that you would have grown up around mental health problems, and I guess the the narrative is now it's much more spoken about, and men are more open to talking. Some of the work that I do with 2 Pints Deep is around creating these environments where guys are more comfortable to talk. But through your career and childhood, having maybe grown up around that and seen how somebody deals with it, how do you manage your own mental health?
So I actually didn't really deal with it at all until my dad passed away, basically in 2019. And that was the trigger for me that made me really have to say, okay, you need to kind of look after yourself here in a bit of a different way, because my dad, even though my dad we knew that he had kind of severe mental health issues, at the time it was totally, like you said, Duncan, the world was totally different. So we never really, honestly, it's terrible to think about, but it was never really taken seriously. That was just the way of it. It was never really taken seriously. My mum was too.
Yeah, I think back,
time, you know.
Yeah.
Like back then, if you heard that someone was struggling mentally, you're like, well, this is just a really random case. Like they were obviously born, something was wrong. It wasn't that we all just have periods of our life that are difficult.
Yeah. So
yeah, and it's the unspoken side of it, then, isn't it? Because then even within the circles, because what we talk about is like support structures, and that can start at home. It starts with your partner, maybe starts with friends and colleagues, and again, in this day and age, you can also go and seek it professionally at cost, or you can go to things like Andy's Man's Club, which is like a free thing every Monday that guys can just go to and talk. Like there's so much more there now, but back then it was almost like considered, you shouldn't talk about that.
There was nothing. There was really.
So
really
I guess on reflection, and being so young, because I now also think about my dad and the conversations that we would have had. You start to think like, could I have done more? It's hindsight, isn't it? You can't think like that. But your mental health now, then, like how do you manage your mental health today? Is it you've got releases outside of work? Is it a partner that you talk to? What is it?
Yeah. So after my dad passed away, it was therapy. So it was private therapy for about 2 years, basically weekly for 2 years. I really struggled with that kind of thing of moving on from that, and we were slightly estranged towards the end of my dad's life as well, so it didn't help in terms of trying to deal with what that was like. So it was very much private therapy for 2 years, like weekly. So it cost me a fortune. But it was, now I've kind of backed off of that. Now it's very much, I think, Nathan, one thing you and I had in common when we first met was fitness. We both loved fitness. And to me, it's still going to maybe not the gym so much, but like going rock climbing, jiu-jitsu, hiking, playing a bit of paddle with my friends, a wee bit of golf. Just a mixture. To me, it's fitness in the outdoors, basically, and sunshine, of which we don't get much in Scotland, but we have today. But basically, these are the things that I kind of try and use as my tools, and my partner, I made it very clear to her. I said to her, look, I need to exercise like every day, basically. Otherwise, I've not got the oxygen supply for myself, and I'm not going to be my best version for you, kind of thing. So she knows that, and she's like, yeah, that's cool. So I'd say that's the main tool that I use. Other thing is also work with people that I really like. Like Nathan, I like Nathan, me and him get along for years, so I know when I work with him that it's no bother, he can put up with my eccentric voice notes, and all my kind of my idiosyncrasies. So I'd say, the basis of it for me right now is the outdoors and fitness.
Yeah.
Do you know what?
It's non-negotiable, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm just saying it's interesting you say about it's important that the people that you work with. So I think whenever, say, I've introduced you to someone, maybe an interview or what have you, one of the first things you talk about is how, like, the person you spoke to, did you get on with them? They were really nice, etc., etc. So yeah.
Work with, I think, Nathan, when we first met, my criteria was, well, I think at first it was anything. But as I kind of got further along, that became more about, I want something that's interesting, it needs to be complex, and it needs to be really difficult. And those were my criteria. So I never heard from you much at points, because I knew I really liked that about working with you, that you really took my criteria seriously.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
I knew.
Well, yeah, you were part of you were part of the Stanmore Implants
Yeah.
group of contractors, wasn't you? It
Yeah.
was that was an interesting place.
Yeah, so that was like a very hard project. First of all, very super intense. You know, like really all go at first. So I think that kind of set the precedent for it. And then the last requirement on the bottom of all the challenging, complexity, and interesting stuff was that I want to work with nice people that I think are cool, and that that like if they email me and they just say Adam, they might know that will surge my anxiety if they don't say hello to me before putting my name in an email. Like these things, just these like little millennial things, like just like don't just end an email saying nothing and start it with Adam, like so I just like I think working with good people to me is like, you're only on a handful of projects as a medical device guy. You're only on a handful of projects through your life. Because you've only got so much time and things take so long. So I want to be with good people when I'm doing those projects because I'm spending a lot of my life with those people,
Yeah,
This might be a bit deep, and I could be way off the mark here, but I'm going to say it just because I can make the link with what you've just said.
Okay.
So you said about sort of how people address you, so it could be an email, just says Adam. Or it could be a micro expression when you see someone. I've personally been able to link that back to when you've got an alcoholic parent. You don't really know what the situation is day to day. So you're always scanning the room to kind of see if it's okay. And I found that then plays in all sorts of parts of your life, whether you're seeing someone, it could be your partner, micro expression, the way someone is, and you're automatically thinking like, is there something wrong? I don't know if that relates.
I've never made the link, but it makes sense. But I've never made the link myself. But yeah, I think that I always say to you, Nathan, about kind of millennial anxiety. I think I really do feel that on a lot of different levels, and I think a lot of it probably is coming from that when you're young, kind of not knowing what your day to day is like. I think a lot of it as well is I think there's also a generational. There's a lot of different working cultures at the moment with the different generations in the workplace, which I think offer a really interesting. I've ended up in some really strange situations on projects because of some of this kind of stuff, and I think like that for me is something I daily try to work on. Is not because you kind of notice most of this is not an issue. You think it is in your head, but then it comes to reality, and really none of it's an issue. It's very strange, like you just ruminate and overthink it, and then build a mountain out of a molehill, and then someone you just reply to that email that just says Adam and no thanks, and then they'll say, oh, that's great, thanks, you're brilliant, and you're like, all right. Bizarre.
So thinking about the turning points that you've mentioned, so you've got the kind of out of university, you're now responsible for everything. How has that shaped the kind of direction that you're in? So that was going into an internship, first job. You're now the director of a couple of companies. Work for yourself in a much better financial position than you were back then. So how has that shaped you?
I'd say it made me realise, I think like Duncan, like you said, it made me realise that I can control things. I can make an impact myself. It made me think of my destiny can be in my own hands if I want it to be, but I also need to take ownership of the risk that comes with that, as well as the accountability that comes with that. I was having a conversation with a friend at the weekend who works for a really big bank, and he is kind of at a place where he's thinking about trying to progress more, but he's not sure if he wants to because he's from the Mediterranean. He grew up by the sea, so he's got a very relaxed attitude, and he came to Glasgow, and I think he's seen the different culture and work from the UK and a lot of these Mediterranean-based places like south of France and stuff, and I think he's feeling that motivation to kind of maybe want more, or I think the cost of living in Scotland as well is also making him think about that. But what I was saying to him about this same thing, Nathan, was, like it's great like having this control and got my own company and all this stuff, but I have the risk, I have the accountability, I have the liability, but ultimately the basis of the foundation of that is I have the ownership, which is what and because I have that ownership, I'm okay with all of those things on top of it, you know. And it made me really realise that that I can move the needle myself. You know, it gave me that drive to say, yeah, you can do it. And I think when we first started working together, that made me see it more. And then from there, it's just kind of went on to make me realise that yeah, I can, you know, you can have an immense amount of impact yourself. Whereas I think you kind of really doubt yourself, you know, especially when you go through academia. Academia, like it didn't really equip me that well for the working world at all, you know, because you realise when you went into the workplace, I just didn't know anything. I just was an absolute idiot. I didn't know anything, you know, like it was useless. You know what I mean?
And what do you think the industry, so people within medical devices right now, could learn from a story like yours?
I'd say the main thing would be that things are going to keep changing, regardless. It's one of my favourite phrases. I think it was Edwards Deming, who's like a quality guru. This is me being a proper quality nerd. Edwards Deming, who was like a quality guru, says, you know, change is the only constant. And I think for me, you know, I think you lose a parent at a young age. You go through some major life changes when you're young, and you really become quite comfortable with change, you know. And I think, and especially in life sciences, especially right now in the medical device industry, you know, I'd say people just need to really try and become comfortable with change, because it's just going to keep changing. You know, new MDR, it's like 8 years old, but it's going to change. In less than a month, it will change now. EU MDR will change in less than a month. You know.
Hopefully that brings loads more work for contractors.
Well, the idea is reduction, so maybe not. So we don't know. Oh. But reduction and innovative pathways basically is the plan. But yeah, the main thing for me is that I'm super comfortable with change. Like, you know, we've just bought a house, but I could leave here quite happily, no problem. You know, like, and I feel really flexible, and I feel really open to change, and it doesn't frighten me. You know, at a stage where we're kind of looking at next steps in life, children and all this kind of stuff, and that is probably the only change that kind of frightens me. It's that side of things. But from a work perspective, I'd say if I was a life sciences professional right now, I would say don't look at AI and think about being scared about it, you know, because I think a lot of people are kind of like scared about artificial intelligence. You know, for example, I think it's a huge change in industry at the moment. But I'd say just welcome it and take it on, and you know, and I'd say if you can't make a role in a position out of something that you need to create, then you're probably not adding that much value, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think someone's been watching my YouTube channel.
It might have been. I think I was probably part of these lessons like years ago. I learned all these from you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it probably been you. I'll credit you anyway. But I think it was.
Thank you.
Thing of if there's a role that you just slot into, maybe you need to have a bit more to do that you can go further.
And on that point, then, I know you said earlier in the conversation that like if someone brings up a 5-year plan, you can't even think about your 5 minutes ahead of you. Yeah. Like professionally, I don't want to say plan because you clearly don't have one, but what's your North Star? Where are you going? What are you wanting to do? Or does it come back to the fundamentals of it being difficult, challenging, good people? Like, yeah, what does that look like?
Fundamentals all still in place. You know, the fundamentals will not change. They are there, the foundation of my professional career. The plan in the next few years is a word that kept coming up to me more in my spirituality journeys, was on contribution. And I want to contribute towards public health in the UK, is what I want to do. So I want to be a part of the divisions that are defining how we legislate certain new technologies that are evolving. I want to work with universities to enable spin-outs to produce effective technologies that we need in the UK for patients, and I want to change the state of the art of public health in the UK, basically, is what I want to be involved in, is the main thing for me. I want to keep running the other consultants. I would like to continue to grow the other auditors, which is my newest little venture. But the main North Star right now is on that contribution to public health, which is something I never thought I would be interested in. And you know, I never thought I would be saying this to you, Nathan, like 8 years after we met. You know, like I don't think you thought that either, probably. You know, but that's ultimately where I want to go.
But again, that comes through just being comfortable with change and like embracing that change. That's now where your focus is. And in another 5 or 10 years' time, I'm sure it'll be different again.
Yeah. Hopefully.
But it brings us to a close, and we'll give you an opportunity to summarise your journey. If you were to leave our listeners with one key lesson, what would that be?
I'd say it would be probably on my kind of comment on change would be, you know, get comfortable with change, in all facets of your life. You know, like that it will be change will come from a professional perspective, but also from a personal perspective. But it becomes really challenging when both of them are coming at you. You know, that's when life is really coming at you. And I think I'm in a job where it's my job to solve problems, and I think problems are a privilege. You know, problems are the privilege because they're a result of an action taken beforehand, you know, or a lack of action sometimes. But, you know, I think we often get obsessed with the to-do list. Like, I've just got like to-do lists all over my desk, you know, and I think it's a privilege to have problems. It's a privilege to have stresses. You know, tax, let's take tax as an example. I say to myself, it's a privilege to pay my tax, to contribute to my economy, you know, and it helps me say that. You know, when I think about things like that. So I'd say take the change, take the problems, take the challenges as a privilege, instead of thinking it's rolling up the hill against you. You know.
Yeah. Nice. Well, it's actually been quite a relatable story as well. I feel like we're on these entrepreneurial paths where we're all in control and we've all got that ownership, and it is motivating. Even on the days where you think this is a slog, but ultimately it's a privilege to have that ownership. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story, Adam.
Thank you.
And we'd like to invite our listeners to reflect on their own turning points. If you think you've got a story to share, reach out to myself or Nathan, and like and subscribe to the channels on YouTube, Spotify and Apple, and we'll bring you another episode very soon. Thank you.
Nice one. Thank you.
Cheers. Ciao.